Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Jesuit School of Law. Today, we are looking at conveyancing principles in a simple Q&A format for better understanding. What is conveyancing? Conveyancing is the legal process by which ownership or interest in land are transferred from one party to another. It covers the entire transaction timeline, from agreement to sale to exchange of contracts to completion and finally registration. Modern conveyancing operates under contract law, land law, equity, and statutory regulation. What is meant by a sale of land? A sale of land is a transaction where the seller agrees to transfer both legal and beneficial title in land to the buyer in return for consideration, usually money. What are the essential components of a valid sale of land? A valid sale of land requires an agreement between the seller and buyer, certainty of subject matter and price, a written contract, compliance with statutory formalities. Without these, the transaction is not legally enforceable. What statute governs contracts for the sale of land? Section 2 of the Law of Property Miscellaneous Provision Act 1989. What does Section 2 Law of Property Act 1989 require? It requires that contract for the sale of land must be in writing, incorporate all expressly agreed terms, signed by or on behalf of each party. This provision exists to ensure certainty, prevent fraud, and protect both parties. When does a contract for the sale of land arise? It arises when the parties agree on essential terms and formalize that agreement in a written contract that complies with statutory requirements. What is the leading case on statutory formalities in land contracts? See Mark Cosland and Duncan Lorry Limited, 1997. The court confirmed that strict compliance with Section 2 is mandatory. This case is still good law. What is exchange of contracts? Exchange of contracts occurs when the signed contracts are formally exchanged, making the agreement legally binding on both parties. What happens at exchange of contracts? At exchange, identical contracts are exchanged. Contracts are validly executed. Solicitors usually conduct the exchange. A deposit, typically 10%, is paid. What is the legal effect of exchange of contracts? Once contracts are exchanged, the buyer acquires an equitable interest in the land. The seller becomes a trustee holding the land for the buyer. Risk passes to the buyer unless otherwise agreed. What case establishes equitable ownership at exchange? See Lysard and versus Edwards, 1876. This case established that upon exchange, the buyer becomes the equitable owner of the land. It remains good law up to today. What is the purpose of exchange of contract? The purpose of exchange of contract is to fix the parties' rights and obligations before completion and make the transaction legally binding. When does exchange of contracts usually occur? After investigation of title, searches, pre-contract inquiries have all been satisfactorily completed. What is completion in conveyancing? Completion is the stage at which the purchase money is paid, possession is transferred, legal title passes to the buyer. What are the key components of completion? They include payment of the balance of the purchase price, execution of the transfer deed, TR1, handover of keys, delivery of vacant possession if agreed. What is the legal effect of completion? On completion, the legal estate passes to the buyer, subject to registration at HM Land Registry in the UK. What case highlights the importance of completion techniques? See the case of Sparks and Biden 2017. In this case, the Court of Appeal confirmed the importance of correct completion procedures. This case is still good law. What happens after completion? Upon completion, the buyer must pay stamp duty, land tax, if applicable, apply for registration at HM Land Registry. What statutes governs registration of land? The Land Registration Act 2002. Legal title is fully perfected only upon registration. How does case law fit into the conveyancing timeline? Pre-exchange, McCausland and Duncan Lorry Limited, formalities, Wolford and Miles, certainty. Now, exchange to completion, Lysard and Edwards, equitable ownership, Rayner and Preston, risk and insurance, post-completion, Sweet First Limited and Chief Land Registrar, registration and priority. What characterizes modern conveyancing? Modern conveyancing is shaped by dominance of registered land, digital conveyancing systems, consumer protection, mortgage lender requirements. Can you summarize conveyancing in one sentence? Surely. Conveyancing is the structured legal process of transferring land ownership, beginning with a written contract, becoming binding on exchange, completed by payment and transfer, and perfected by registration. What is the academic significance of conveyancing? Conveyancing represents the practical application of land law, converting abstract estates and interest into enforceable legal ownership through a tightly regulated transactional process. If you find this video helpful, please comment so we can share your experiences in the next. Till we meet again, this is Edesri Enowo of Edesri School of Law. Thank you.